Alright, we're going to start with talking about something called Cpctc. And those letters are an acronym. It stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Basically what that's telling you is if we know that we have two congruent triangles, that their corresponding sides are congruent and their corresponding angles are congruent. So looking at this picture here, look at the markings. I can tell that this side and this side are congruent, this side and this side are congruent, this side and this side are congruent, and the same is true about the angles. Those two are congruent, those two are congruent, and those two are congruent. You look at the markings, and so like how this has one and that has one, that's makes that congruent. There's three here and three there, that makes that congruent. So first I just want to be able to say, okay, what triangle is corresponding to ABC? Alright, if I start with A, because they started with A, there's two little circles there at the angle, so pick the one with two circles over here. So E must go with it. B is next. B has the one little part. And then C is next. It has three, so I go to the one with three, and so that's E, F, D. Okay, here's another one. They didn't label the sides, but we're going to say that these two triangles are congruent. So looking at it, we have L. L is where the right angle is. So I know S has to come first. Then it says M. Well, M has one little circle there. The one little circle here is a P, so M and P go together. And then N is next. It has two, so T goes together. And even if it doesn't look like it really goes together, that's sort of what's going on there. Now, besides just looking at it and identifying the triangles that's congruent, we also want to talk about the parts that are congruent. So first let's identify the triangle, and then we're going to talk about each part of it. So A, B, C. So notice the angles, we don't have them marked, so we've got to look at the sides. So it starts off with A and then B. A and then B is on the one side, so I know it's this side. But what side does it go to afterwards? Because I don't know whether to start with E and D or start with D and E. So A, B, and then C, it goes from 1 to 3, 1 to 3. So I want to go from 1 to 3. That means I'm going to have to start here and go this way. So that's going to be E, D, F. Now, the rest of these, you can use what you know, and you can kind of look at it and tell, or because A is where the E is, I know that angle A is congruent to angle E. C is where the F is, so I know that this is angle F. AB is where ED is, so this would be ED. AC is where EF is, so this would be EF. Okay, last one in this section. Notice that on this one we don't even have a picture, but we know that tan is congruent to big. Again, we just look at it. A is in the middle, I is in the middle, so I must be the one it's congruent to. AN must be IG. And then NAT, just a different way to write the angle, so it's backwards, would be GIB. Now, once we know that we have some congruent triangles, we also can find X and find the angles of other angles and things like that. And so that's what I want to look at next. So here they're telling us that this is congruent, and I'm guessing that the triangles would end up being congruent. So it's asking us to find X. Well, if these two triangles are congruent, that means that these two sides are congruent. So if I want to find X, we're back to just solve an equation, so I know that these two things are going to be equal to each other. So I'm going to subtract 7x on both sides. And then I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. Divide by -3, so x is 4. So a lot of these are going to be setting some things equal to solve what you're looking for. Number 6. Alright, so these two angles are congruent. So that must mean that these two angles are congruent. So to solve for x, I'm just going to set that equal to each other. Let's subtract 2x on both sides. Add 6. Divide by 2. So x is 1. Number 7 says to find jk. I already see that these two sides are the same and these two sides are the same. So what that means about the third side, if we've got two congruent triangles, is that jk, which is what we're looking for, is also the same as this one. So this is 41. So again, just realizing that the corresponding parts are congruent. On a problem like this, they're probably going to give you two triangles like triangle ADB is congruent to triangle CBD. And using this information, that would help you know what to do with the triangles or with the angles. So it says ADB, so that means starting here and going there, is congruent to CBD. CBD, that right there is telling you that these two angles are congruent. So I set those two equal to each other. Subtract x on both sides. Subtract 15. Divide by 6. And we get x is negative 2. Okay. If I'm setting this one up, it probably would say triangle IEF is congruent to triangle HGF. This one's a little bit different. We do need to think about this one. You don't just set 3x plus 7 equal to 25, because what we find out using this information, IEF and HGF, these are the same, which makes these the same and these the same. Okay, so that means that this is 25. But I got to get this one because that's the one that 3x plus 7 is equal to. So I'm going to take this. I know that in a triangle that all the angles add up to 180. So I'm going to take 90 and 25. Remember, this is 90 because it's a right triangle. 90 and 25, I'm going to add that together and subtract from 180. Which will give me this angle here. Now that I know that angle, these two now set equal to each other. So there are a couple problems where you have to find the angle that it's asking you to look for and compare. So we subtract 7 on both sides. Divide by 3. And you might get a decimal, and that's okay. All right. Last problem. So it tells me that measure of angle A, which is this angle right here, is 5x minus 7. It wants us to find x, find A, and find E. Okay? So let's look at the markings here. I know that these two are congruent, so I know that this is 82. This is whatever that is. And then the other angle, okay, so I know that this is 50. So it's similar to the last problem, because to find this one, I need to add these and subtract from 180 to get this one, and then set it equal to each other. So 180 minus 82 and minus 50 does give me 48. I'll write that to the side just so if you're not following, I know that I add those together and subtract from 180 to get the 48. That's where that comes from. So I know that 5x minus 7 equals 48 because of the markings. So I'm going to add 48 to 7. And then I'm going to divide by 5. Now, it says to find x. We found x. It says find angle A. Well, we know that angle A is 48 because it's the same as this one. It also says to find E. Well, we did that as well. And so there's the process. So you'll have some problems like we did at the beginning where you identify the sides and the angles. And then you'll have some problems where you just have to set things equal and make sure you're following along to solve.